What happens when a Hollywood legend finally stops tolerating the interruptions, the cheap shots, and the condescending tone, and decides to fire back on live television? What you're about to see isn't just a disagreement. It's one of the most devastating on-air verbal beatdowns in the history of The View, where Jane Fonda didn't just clap back at Joy Behar. She dismantled her piece by piece in front of millions. This showdown got so intense that the studio didn't just go silent, it froze. And by the end, Joy Behar wasn't just embarrassed. She looked like she wished the ground beneath the table would open up and swallow her whole. Please watch until the end. It'll be worth every second of your time. As soon as Whoopi had just finished the usual line, something warm about how it was always an honor to have Jane Fonda back on The View, when Joy leaned in, eyes locked on Jane like she'd been waiting the whole morning for this moment. "So Jane," Joy cut in, not even giving Jane time to settle in her chair, "you talk a lot about climate change and sacrifice, but isn't it a little hard to take seriously coming from someone who spent most of her life living like a luxury consumer? Private jets, big houses, red carpets. You tell regular people to give things up while you never really had to." The room reacts instantly. Jane's smile didn't disappear completely, but it changed. Her jaw tightened just enough to notice. She blinked once, slowly, like she'd just heard a dog bark that she wasn't sure was friendly. She tilted her head slightly. "Wow," she said, voice calm, almost soft. "We're starting there?" Joy didn't flinch. She shrugged like she was just being honest. "I mean, people are thinking it," she said. "I'm just saying it out loud." Jane looked at Joy for a beat longer, studying Joy's face. A small, thin smile appeared on her lips. "Joy," Jane said slowly, "if you want to play the call-out game, the least you could do is use facts, not just whatever you're feeling today." That line landed like a slap. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Joy leaned back in her chair, widened her eyes dramatically, and let out a short, fake laugh. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, dripping sarcasm. "I thought you were used to being challenged by now. Or is it just applause you're comfortable with?" Jane didn't look away. "I'm perfectly fine with being challenged," she replied, still calm. "But there's a difference between a challenge and an ambush." Joy smirked, like she'd been waiting for that word. "Ambush," she repeated. "Come on, Jane. You're Jane Fonda. You survived Hollywood, Vietnam protests, 3 husbands, and this is what you call an ambush." Jane's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "No," she said. "This is what I call lazy." Joy's smile flickered. "Lazy," she said, her tone suddenly sharper. "Because I asked about the gap between what you preach and how you live?" "Because," Jane answered, "you're pretending that gap exists without bothering to check whether it actually does." Joy gave a small, disbelieving scoff. "Okay, so what? You don't have multiple homes? You never flew private?" She pushed. "You've never enjoyed the lifestyle of being, well, let's be honest, very, very rich?" Jane nodded once, like she'd expected that exact line. "Of course I've had privilege," she said. "I've never hidden that. I've made mistakes. I've changed things. I've adjusted how I live. People evolve, Joy. That's kind of the point of growing up." Joy cut in again, waving a hand. "Yeah, but you don't just get to say, 'I've changed,' and move on," she said. "You tell people struggling to pay rent to turn down their heat and eat less meat, while you've spent decades at the top of the food chain. That's what I'm asking about. Does that not sound the slightest bit hypocritical to you?" Jane's face didn't crack, but her eyes did something different now. They sharpened. "Are you actually asking a question?" she said. "Or just rehearsing a speech you wrote in your head on the way in?" That got closer to the bone than Joy liked. Her shoulders stiffened. "I'm asking what viewers want to know," Joy snapped back. "I'm being honest. I'm not here to kiss up." "No," Jane said. "You're not kissing up. You're swinging down. There's a difference." Joy let out another laugh, this one shorter, meaner. "Oh, swinging down?" she repeated. "That's rich. The Hollywood legend calling herself the victim." Jane raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "I didn't say I'm the victim," she replied. "I'm saying you came into this segment looking for a gotcha moment instead of a real conversation. And you're proving it with every word you say. Joy's voice went a notch louder, that familiar talk show edge creeping in. "I'm doing my job," she said, which last time I checked includes asking uncomfortable questions when someone builds a brand on moral superiority. Jane gave a short, humorless chuckle. "Uncomfortable questions are fine," she said. "Uninformed attacks are not." Joy leaned forward now, elbows on the table, the fake smile gone. "So what exactly did I get wrong?" she challenged. "You've never enjoyed luxury while preaching sacrifice? You've never used your name and status while telling everyone else to do better?" Jane held her gaze. "You're doing it again," she said. "You're not asking. You're accusing. You've already decided the story. I'm just here as a prop so you can look tough." "Or," Joy shot back, "you're just not used to someone pointing out the contradictions." Jane nodded slowly, like she was filing that sentence away. "Joy," she said, voice lower now, "if you knew half as much about my actual life as you do about the headlines, this would be a very different conversation." Joy raised her eyebrows. "Enlighten me," she said. "Please, America's watching." "Oh, I know they are," Jane replied. "That's why I'm not going to let you turn this into one more performance where you pretend cheap shots are bravery." Joy laughed again, but this time there was a crack in it. "Performance?" she said. "Jane, you've spent your life in front of cameras. You invented performance." "And somehow," Jane said, leaning in just a little, "I still manage to tell the truth more often than you did in that one question." The temperature at the table dropped. Joy's mouth pressed into a thin line. She hadn't expected her to push back like this, calmly, directly, and personally. "So let me get this straight," Joy said, trying to regain control. "You think I'm being unfair because I didn't open with a soft, fluffy question about your movie? You think this is me, attacking you?" "I think," Jane answered, "you opened with a line that was designed to make me look like a fraud before I said a single word. That's not curiosity, that's theater, and not very good theater either." Joy stared at her. She didn't wait long to throw the next punch. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice cutting sharper than before. "Jane, you can't preach about saving the planet when you spent half your life being the poster child for luxury. Private jets, big mansions. Come on, you can't have it both ways." Jane didn't blink. She just stared at Joy the way someone looks at a loud car alarm, annoyed but not surprised. "Joy," Jane said, "the only luxury I see right now is your confidence in talking about things you clearly don't understand." That line hit harder than the first one. Joy's shoulders tightened, like she'd just been poked in a fresh bruise. "Oh, I understand just fine," Joy fired back. She leaned in closer, voice lower, meaner. "I know your type, the ones who think they're above everybody else." Jane let out a small laugh. Not amused, more like she couldn't believe Joy thought this was a winning strategy. "And I know your type," Jane replied. "People who build a stage just so they can shout at whoever sits in the guest chair." Joy's jaw clenched. This wasn't going the way she pictured it in her head. Jane didn't let the silence breathe. She pushed again, sharper this time. "Tell me, Joy, how many minutes of research did you do before you opened your mouth? 2? Maybe 3? Joy froze for half a second, and instead of backing off, she did what she always does when she's cornered. She swung harder. "Wow, Jane. Sensitive much?" Joy snapped. "I'm just stating facts. You've stood on the wrong side of history before. We all remember your little choices during the war." That was the moment the air changed. Jane's expression didn't explode. It tightened, slowly, dangerously. She tilted her head a few degrees, studying Joy like she was deciding whether to respond or bury her. "You want to talk history with me?" Jane said quietly. "With me? Joy, are you absolutely sure you want to go there?" But Joy doubled down, almost proud of herself. "Please," she said. "History doesn't need me to defend it. It speaks for itself." Jane pushed her chair back and stood up. Not angrily. Worse. Calm. Controlled. She walked to the edge of the table, stopping just close enough that Joy had to look up. "Joy," Jane said, voice steady as steel, "I'm going to give you one chance to take that back. One. Just one." Joy swallowed, but ego beat common sense. "I'm not taking anything back." Jane didn't walk off. She didn't explode. She simply turned around, pulled her chair back in, and sat down with a calmness that was somehow 10 times more dangerous than her standing up. "All right," Jane said quietly. "Let me teach you the difference between a mistake and a fabrication." Joy tried to keep her face steady, but her shoulders gave her away. They pulled in a little, like she was unconsciously bracing for impact. Her eyes darted toward Whoopi for half a second, like she needed a signal, but no one was stepping in. Jane leaned in just slightly, voice low enough that Joy had to listen. "You don't want the truth," Jane said. "You want someone to throw under the bus so you can pretend this is journalism." Joy opened her mouth, then closed it again. She wasn't used to silence. She wasn't used to not having a comeback ready. Jane didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "Joy," she added, "you're not asking questions. You're looking for a victim to yell at. That's all this is." Joy's jaw clenched. Her eyes narrowed. She wanted to fire back, but everything she thought of suddenly felt too weak, too petty, too small. Joy forced a breath, straightened herself, and tried to regain even the tiniest bit of ground. "I'm just doing my job," she said. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't confident. It was defensive. And Jane heard it instantly. Jane didn't miss a beat. "If this is your job," she said, "you should really go ask for a refund on the training." That one hit Joy right behind the ribs. Joy looked down, then back up, then down again. The confidence she walked into the segment with was gone. Her voice went a little higher as she tried to repeat her point, a sure sign she was slipping. I'm asking what viewers want to know," she tried again, but even she didn't sound convinced. Jane shook her head. "Volume doesn't make you right, Joy." Joy blinked, caught off guard. "Huh?" "You heard me," Jane said. "Speaking louder won't fix weak arguments." Joy felt her face heat up. She sat back, arms crossed. The body language of someone who wasn't winning anymore, but refused to admit it. Jane stayed perfectly still, controlled. Jane didn't wait for anyone to step in. She leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the table, eyes locked onto Joy, like she'd finally decided to stop playing defense altogether. "Joy," she said, calm but cutting, "you think you're holding guests accountable? You don't even understand what accountability means." Joy's mouth opened in shock. "Wow. Okay, so now you're attacking me?" Jane shook her head slowly. "No, I'm describing you. Attacking would mean I'm making something up." She paused for half a breath. "And I don't need to make anything up, Joy." That line hit like a punch straight to the chest. Joy blinked fast, trying to swallow whatever comeback she was scrambling to find. But Jane wasn't done. "You keep throwing around this term, tough questions, like it's some kind of shield," Jane said. "But Joy, tough questions aren't what embarrass people." She leaned in just a little closer, voice low, steady, surgical. "Stupid questions do." Joy went dead still, just frozen, like she'd finally realized she was outmatched, outprepared, and outplayed on her own turf. Joy sucked in a breath, trying desperately to pull herself back together. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and forced out one last attempt at control. "I'm speaking for the viewers," she said, voice shaking, but trying hard not to sound like it. "I represent them." Jane didn't even hesitate. "No," she said, "you represent laziness." Joy flinched, visibly. Her eyes darted around the table, almost begging for backup that wasn't coming. Jane leaned slightly toward her, not aggressive, just steady and certain. The kind of confidence Joy had been pretending to have since the moment Jane sat down. "Joy," Jane said, "you don't want the truth. You want to win. But people who want to win need arguments. Actual arguments." She paused just long enough for Joy to feel the weight of what was coming. "And today, Joy," Jane said quietly, "all you have is volume." Joy's face collapsed. The fight drained right out of her. Her shoulders slumped back into the chair, her arms crossed tight. The posture of someone who realized too late that she'd been swinging at someone who was simply better. Jane sat back calmly, not triumphant, just done. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Joy sat there staring at the table, her fingers clenched together, her breath shaky. She knew the fight was over, and she wasn't the one who won it. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, maybe, maybe I should have prepared better. Jane didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She just looked at Joy with a steady calm. The kind of calm that comes from being absolutely sure of where you stand. Preparation is the bare minimum, Joy, Jane said. Respect is what you were missing. Joy didn't argue. She couldn't. There was nothing left to defend. Jane pushed her chair back and stood up with the kind of quiet confidence only someone who had weathered far bigger storms could carry. Thank you for having me, she said, adjusting her blazer. And I hope next time you interview someone, you do it with understanding instead of hostility. She started to walk away, then paused. Just long enough for Joy to look up again. Because Joy, Jane added, her voice steady but razor sharp, noise doesn't cover up ignorance. And with that, she turned and walked off the set, leaving Joy Behar sitting alone at the table, silent, stunned, and fully aware of the consequences of trying to humiliate someone who had spent a lifetime becoming unshakable. Moments like this don't come around often, and they sure don't go quietly. If you've ever seen a guest flip the script this hard, drop it in the comments. And if you want more explosive on-air showdowns just like this one, make sure to hit subscribe. This story was wild, and trust me, the next one is even crazier.